Iran. The terrorist nature of the Kiev regime, maybe anyone on the West called it the way it is, and we see numerous examples on a daily basis. This is just an overall example of how the center of Europe forms a terrorist cell. The Kiev regime continues to commit terrorist acts against civilians of our country without complete ignorance of those who supply arms to it and funds it. In the last week, the drones hit about 140 civilians, among which 19 were died, including one child. 121 was injured, including 8 minor. These are just several effects of the crimes of the Ukrainian army. In Belgorod region on the 23rd of August, the drones in the settlement Repikhovka killed a civilian. On the 24th of August, in this settlement, drone attacked a church. On the 23rd of August, a drone which hit a car in the settlement Krasny Yuruga, injuring 2. In Saloti Resettlement, the drone hit a bus, killing 1 person. In Bryansk region, the security services said that eliminated the diversion group of the special forces of the Ukrainian army. 3 terrorists were eliminated and 3 detained. The combatants planned terrorist acts on the Russian transport infrastructure and admitted they were accomplices in blasting the railway roads in Belgorod region in September 2024. They were trained, and this is very important, and we'll come back to this topic today. They were trained by the UK and Canadian coaches and trainers in Ukraine, Lithuania, Estonia, and Norway. Terrorists shall be punished and prosecuted. And I would like to repeat as to who was the masterminds of these diversions. On the 22nd of August, the drone hit the car in the settlement of Hinel, injuring a man and a woman. On the night of the 22nd of August, the army, the Ukrainian army, hit with drones and MLRS HIMARS, damaging a fuel infrastructure in Donetsk district. On the 23rd of August, in the settlement Kirillovka, a bike drove an explosive device, killing a man and a minor. On the 24th of August, drones attacked the settlement Sveny Transportne, injuring 2 women, a 12-year child and a man. Because of the hit of the car in the settlement Chirovichi, 2 people were injured. In the Volgograd region, the 23rd of August, the drones attacked and one of them hit near a residential building, injuring 3 civilians, including a child. In DPR, on the 21st of August, the drones, with the use of long-distance missiles with a shrapnel combat pod and with MLRS HIMARS, hit the town of Yenakiv, killing 2 civilians and injuring 21 people, including a child. On the 25th of August, the drone attacked in Gorlivka and injured 4 people in Kursk region. On the 21st of August, due to the shelling of the settlement Sergeyeva, injuring a 54-year-old civilian. On the 22nd of August, because of the explosion of the explosive device during agricultural works in the settlement of Tolpina, injuring 3 women of 36. They are alive but injured, the age of 36, 37, and 48 years. On the 24th of August, high-precision missiles in the residential building, killing and injuring 3 civilians. On the night of the 24th of August, the Ukrainian army tried to attack the Kursk nuclear power station with the drones. The drone was hit, but it exploded, and that led to an arson of the transformator, and Block 3 was out of function on 50%. In LPR on the 21st of August, the drones hit the cities of Kremenna and Lysychansk, killing 2 civilians and injuring one. The same day in Artsakhelsk, the drone attacked the civilian courtyard, killing a woman. In the Republic of Crimea, the 25th of August, the Federal Security Services of Russia prevented a terrorist act against security services of Crimea with the use of explosive device that should have been and was prepared to be put to the Orthodox icon. And we have already told you about such narratives, about these notorious means of warfare is used for a long time by Ukrainians. This was the victim of this fraudulous scheme was a 54-year citizen of the Volgograd region who was just a suicide bomber. Fortunately, this explosive hasn't been blown up, and this terrorist act was prevented. The Kherson region on the 24th of August. In the Kakhovskaya district, the artillery shell killed a year born in 1997 and a child born in 2014, injuring a man of 1991 and a child 2021. In the city of Alyoshki on the 24th of August, killed 5 people were injured. In Uzbekistan, 5 civilians were killed, including a 27-year-old nurse of the ambulance. In the Khersonsk region, only a half of ambulance cars were hit. And we don't see any complaints of these human rights defenders, of all those who profess human rights in the West. They keep silent. On the night of the 22nd of August, the Ukrainian Nazi attacked the pipeline Druzhba, and we'll talk about this later on today. Now, as for this energy infrastructure, it was hit by drones and missiles. That impeded to temporary cancellation of oil supply to the region. And the European Commission, in response to the request, stated that Brussels, just think about it, does not see any danger for the EU if the oil supplies stop, oil supplies to Hungary and Slovakia. And I wonder, are you colleagues inside the EU? Now, it seems that you are having friends against each other. It seems that you are not for economy, but for the policy when all those who are inside your structure will feel worse. You cannot exclude the fact that in this acute confrontation with the EU majority with Bratislava, such an approach indeed could have prevailed in the EU functionaries. So, if this was true, this is yet another permission to the Kiev regime to continue its terrorist attacks against critical, important energy infrastructure in the European Union. What is striking more here? Do they want to hear Hungary? All those who on a daily basis claim that they are in solidarity. During an interview of our Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov to an NBC channel, and was released on the 24th of August, just the other day, you can see the script. The show presenter disrupted, and this is their own habit, citing unstated facts. It was allegedly made by Russia during the special military operation in Ukraine. Some cites from the international humanitarian law. No evidence, although there were no evidence, according to good, in quote, traditions. The Minister of Foreign Affairs of Lavrov sent a letter to the journalist requesting to submit information on the cases referred to. Then the head of our ministry mentioned that the journalist avoided numerous facts of war crimes committed by the Ukrainian army, killing Russian civilians. And we're talking about this every briefing. We tell this on a daily basis with our diplomats on an everyday basis.
The reports of the ambassador of Russia, Miroshnik, and the member of the public chamber of the Russian Federation, Grigoriev, about atrocity of the Ukrainian Nazis, as well as linked to videos with proof of military crimes of the Ukrainian soldiers were enclosed. We hope that, given the objectivity that NBC always claim in the covering of important national political developments, the leadership of the channel will show these materials in the air with relevant commentaries. However, it's always been weak, but there have been no comments. Essentially, the TV channel ignored these materials. We would like to know where they plan to publish these materials, for yet again this will show the biasness and propaganda character of covering the Ukrainian crisis in the Western media, including NBC now. But for these crimes that I mentioned, the Kiev regime is not only responsible, but also is punished for crimes in the Kursk region against civilians and Russian soldiers. Long sentence in prison were given to the Ukrainian soldier Pavel Doshenkov, 16 years. 27 and 14 years in prison were given to terrorist Igor Kim and Nikita Kochera for shelling houses and infrastructure facilities of Mariupol in March-April 2024 that led to the death of 2 people and wounding of 2 more civilians, including underage children. 7 Ukrainian militants were given sentences. Alexander Frolikov, Igor Lizhenko, Denis Voskoboynik received 24 years in prison. Mikhail Ulins, Denis Kolikhaev, Pavel Vovk, Viktor Zhukov received 23 years. As we see what is going on in the run-up of the upcoming anniversaries of the blow-ups of the civil infrastructure, Nord Stream pipelines, we see the actions of those who, for all those years, have not been duly investigating these terror attacks on the civil energy facilities. On August 21st in Italy, on the request of the German General Prosecutor's Office, the former employee of the Ukraine Security Service, he is suspected to be involved in the blow-up on the Nord Stream since September 2024. According to the media, he is also investigated on the involvement of the blow-up of the seizure oil tanker in February this year. But we will go back to this story later on. Now about the peace process. It is forgotten and remembered once again. What is going on? Zelenskyy proposed, or it's better to say continued to take steps leading to sabotage of the peace process and escalation of conflict. On August 21st, he told the foreign journalist that Kiev refuses to legally recognize the territories that they lost to be Russian. He doesn't care about the will of the overwhelming majority of people in this region who decided to join Russia following the referendum in 2024. He tried to accuse our country in unwillingness to end the war. He discarded the possibility to grant the Russian language an official status. Instead, he talked about the NATO forces in Ukraine, on land, in air, and on sea. In his video address on August 24th, dedicated to the Day of Independence of Ukraine, he continued to demonstrate belligerence. He said that Ukraine will never in history have to be ashamed, as he said, the Russians called a compromise. He ranted about independence that his regime lost long ago. Probably there is a small amount of it, even before Zelenskyy came to the office, but he lost the remains of it as well. Here's the direct quote. "The future of our country is also up to us," Zelenskyy said. Today, he said, both the US and Europe agree. Ukraine hasn't yet won, according to Zelenskyy, but hasn't lost too. I would like to remind you, you have to answer for words. And we should remember what he said in 2024, 2023, 2024, during those sessions of the Rammstein format, at all Munich security conferences, during all these conferences, roundtables, symposiums in Brussels, when they talked about how they inflicted, according to them, a strategic defeat on Russia, and how they were about to win, the Ukraine was about to win. Probably they should develop one unified idea if the sponsors do it together with Ukraine. And this takes place amid the situation where they send millions of people to be killed and maimed millions of peoples. It takes place amid plunder of the country that long ago lost its sovereignty, and the main thing amid the losses of the Ukrainian army in the front. Zelenskyy also boasted to the Brussels that Ukraine does not ask but proposes alliance and partnership to the EU. I would like to ask, probably it is high time you answered for words. Do you remember when Zelenskyy, together with his regime, defends the European Union, NATO for, according to him, Russia and so on? Probably he should say that he lost it. He wasn't able to do that. It's not a base for Europe against Russia, and they don't defend anyone. It turned out to be hilarious, and the EU a lot can argue with such statements. Oh well, let us talk in these terms. Zelenskyy not asked, but proposed for more money to be given to him. Negative treatment among the EU countries, especially in the agricultural sphere, is well known. With such a partner, Europeans will face dubious prospects of having stolen armaments and fled Ukrainian Nazis. One more fact here. On August 24th, Zelenskyy, during the press conference with the Prime Minister of Canada, hinted the preparation of yet another bloody provocation in the DPR. He said that the long-range strikes in Donbass, I quote, very positive results. He also announced some surprises for Russians and hoped that Ukrainian forces will be in Ukraine. The Prime Minister supported this idea, followed up on this idea, and promised to send $500 million for drones within the Pearl program for Ukraine. You know what's surprising? The words. I'm not even talking about body language of Zelenskyy, but even the words that he uses repeats the words of the heads of the terrorist units of the past. Now about those who sponsor all this. Zelenskyy continued to ask for more during the contacts with other Westerners. At the meeting with Prime Minister of Norway on August 25th, he said that Ukraine needs some $1 billion monthly to procure American weapons. The Prime Minister promised to Zelenskyy $8.45 billion in 2025-2026 and facilitation to supply them with 2 Patriot systems together with Germany. He talked about $690 million for air defense system for Ukraine. It will be supplied together with Germany. Defense Ministry of Ukraine, following the visit to Kiev of Defense Ministry of Sweden, said on August 24th that they reached an agreement with Stockholm about the joint production of defense products on each other's territories. Callas kept up with them on August 22nd in the era of the BBC Today. She said that Russia tries to lure Europe into a trap when it talks about retaining the Ukrainian territories, as she said, in an attempt to justify the further money from the pockets of the Europeans to pump Kiev with weapons. She said once and once again that the most effective security guarantee of Ukraine is a strong Ukrainian army, but it did exist. The Ukrainian army was really strong, but it was destroyed by European bureaucrats with those supplies. Isn't even this evident fact cannot be acknowledged by them? They destroyed everything. They're destroying the Ukrainian people. They continue saying that more weapons for Ukraine will help the country. Security guarantees continued to be mentioned by the aide to the Ukrainian President Podolak. He said that Moscow should know that Ukraine has missiles of smaller range, but also middle and longer range that can hit targets of up to 2,000 kilometers away. But every day they have less and less people. First of all, because Brussels and the president of Ukraine kill those people. Second, because people flee the Ukrainian armed forces. Let's look at the statistics. Those are fantastic figures. Only in July this year, the Ukraine saw 17,000 criminal cases because of the abuse of the weapons supplied by the West. No, these are cases on desertment. From January through July, the number exceeded 125 cases, and since the beginning of the armed conflict, they are almost 250,000. According to the unofficial data, about 400 Ukrainians every day leave their positions. It means that every month about 12,000 people leave the front. The total number of deserters since 2022 can reach up to 400,000 people, but they prefer not to talk about this, but we know why. And of course, let's talk about the main narrative that they are discussing right now, that they started to fantasize about. This is besides the weapon supplies. It's security guarantees. Look at this. Security guarantees were mentioned by Podolak. The same idea was followed on by Ursula von der Leyen. She once again, and I think she's really into zoology. She talked about Ukraine being a porcupine. The more quotes from Ursula von der Leyen we have, the more proof we have. The peace in this paradigm is harmful, and Ukrainian supporters of war will mire more and more in their destructive Russophobe ideology. Within this, if the situation continues to develop within this logic, let's talk a little more about the security guarantees. The Western media continue to discuss the scenarios of granting security guarantees to Ukraine. We read a lot there. They propose some peacekeeping contingents after the ceasefire. The stronger military presence of NATO in the Black Sea region, patrols with the NATO forces of the Ukrainian Air Force, stronger militarization of Ukraine. They spread the idea about limiting guarantee countries to the key NATO countries. We believe that these options are lopsided and are aimed at curbing Russia. And this violates the neutral, out-of-bloc and non-nuclear status of Ukraine under 1990 Declaration on State Sovereignty of Ukraine. This also violates indivisibility of security and cements Kyiv's role as strategic provocateur on the Russian borders. This is a tactics described widely in legal literature. They did not come up with anything new. We have a strategic provocateur on our borders. The security guarantees based on the colonial mindset are not such, because they lead to degradation of strategic stability on the regional and global levels. We have to understand that security guarantees is not a condition. It is a result of peaceful settlement based on the removal of the root causes of the crisis in Ukraine that will guarantee security of Russia as well. We believe that, among other things, it should include demilitarization, denazification, neutral, out-of-bloc, and non-nuclear status of Ukraine, recognition of territorial realities, ensuring of rights of Russian and Russian-speaking peoples and stop and seizure of persecution of the canonic orthodoxy. This should consider the interests of Russia. It cannot turn Ukraine into an animal, and those are words of Ursula von der Leyen. What did she say? She talked about steel porcupine. If she only knew what this really meant, it would be hilarious. This approach to security guarantees that are discussed behind closed doors in the Western media, this leads on the other track and turns the Ukraine into a kind of an animal that will serve as the source of threats not only to Russia and Europe, that will be set against Russia. I'll tell you yet again, this is not our definition. This is the definition that is given by Ursula von der Leyen to Ukraine. This is how the West sees Ukraine in future. For us, Ukraine, as President of our country said, and representatives of our leadership said many times, and is a brotherly nation, is the one nation that is now experiencing a tragedy. It was, for the West, Ukraine is a porcupine, it's an animal.
Let us recall this and remember. Now, as for the new technologies, I think you might think this is just about construction of some new high-tech industries in Ukraine. This is about new oppressive means used by the Kiev regime, which invents new oppressive ways. It was with the submission of the Prime Minister of Ukraine, Yuri Svidenko, which provides for the criminal punishment for the crossing the border and providing huge fines and deprivation of freedom up to 3 years. Political scientists has called and proved that this was a dictatorship in Ukraine and warned about the splash of protest movement once this law is adopted. And what is striking, but we've seen a lot from the Western countries, but here we see a fantastic sight. In Zaporizhia region, the Russian army found the anti-Russia literature published and funded by the EU. Long before the special military operation, these books were stored in the libraries of the region and used to work with the audience of different ages. This was not just legitimate. This was a recommended literature. Let's have a look what these books contain. The books for the youngers contain a pretext of the former head of the EU representative in Ukraine, of Yug Mingarelli. He worked in this capacity between 2016 and up to 2019. There he calls little readers, and I quote, to stand with the European ideas and fight against Russia. I think it's nonsense. What the EU was doing, had been doing between 2016 and 2019. Another block is dedicated to the history where our country is viewed as a threat to a civilized world. Moreover, it is known that in the 90s, the foundation of the Canada-Ukrainian Center of the Krupsky Library in Donetsk, official Ottawa and ambassador of Canada in Ukraine, Francois Matsys, transferred dozens of books of extremist and nationalism, which proves the glorification and applauds in favor of the collaborationist in the Canadian Parliament. That is exactly the same literature they dispatched to back then Ukraine. One of the ambassadors in the library which republished another set of stories in 1938, found such positive sightings of Hitler and Mussolini on the land, on the Ukrainian soil, where back then had more victims, more than ever any other country, who suffered from Nazism and fascism. It is all in blood there because of Hitler and Mussolini. And now it was supposed by those who held the power in Kiev to positively quote the head of the Third Reich and its accomplices. In the book of Peter Merchuk, Meetings in Israel, Propaganda, Some Insult to the Jews, Insult of Jews. And I think it's quite normal to them to store such books in the library. And all international organizations, funds and agencies, commissions and committees who should have responded to this, they keep silent. And these are the facts to us which reaffirm the relevance of objectives to demilitarize and denazify Ukraine and to eliminate all threats coming from its territory, and all the targets and objectives will be achieved as set by our leadership. And we will continue talking about Ukraine. As you know, on the 17th, 18th and 19th of August, the Ukrainian armed forces at least 3 times with drones attacked the infrastructure, and we briefed about that today, of the Druzhba pipeline. I would like to repeat, it ensures unimpeded oil supplies to East Europe, including to Hungary. Recently, it stopped pumping of oil for several days when there were maintenance works and reconstruction works. And of course, Hungary was indignated, which viewed these actions of Kiev as an infringement on the sovereignty of the country, and who stated to the European Commission on the flagrant violation by Ukraine of the EU guarantees on non-heating energy infrastructure used for supplying energy to the EU countries. It's not for the first time that we see that the EU agencies just close a blind eye and sacrifice the EU citizens if it infringes and inflicts a defeat to Russia. And I think that's the best word when in Russia you say that I will do quite the opposite to injure myself. In the West, it had a kind of a new meaning and development. This logic is an imperative to them, and they stand ready to sacrifice everything, their own security, their own economy and well-being, and even its citizens, just to damage Russia. There is no adequate response from Europe in terms of this infrastructure derailment. What is surprising is their reaction when they stated that this won't impact energy security and well-being of the EU member states, and that is striking. And the EU Commission, I would like to repeat, should have commented this situation in terms of their own right and own laws. But they not only abstained from commenting the actions of the Kiev regime, but didn't see any risks for unimpeded supplies, oil supplies to Europe. And they overtly show that some complexities that some European countries feel if they follow the wrong, in perspective of Brussels, policy is not a problem. And that's just a dubious solidarity, European solidarity. Let's remember this, because it proves that the EU always lies, that the acts in solidarity with each other. The next step could have been that all the energy strikes are in line with the policy when in May Europe offered a roadmap how to refuse energy supplies from Russia. But nevertheless, they have not cancelled the laws which view the same acts as terrorist acts. It is obvious that the Brussels and in the Kiev regime gave a carte blanche to Kiev regime to hit any energy infrastructure in Russia, and by becoming accomplice to the terrorist actions of Kiev. Now we are moving on to the topic which is about connected with the current strikes on the energy infrastructure of the Druzhba pipeline. But they happened a long time before, and I'm talking about the investigation, the so-called Western investigation, the strikes on another energy infrastructure, Nord Stream 1 and Nord Stream 2 gas pipelines. We have raised this topic on many occasions. On the 26th of September, will mark 3 years since the blow-up of Nord Stream 1 and Nord Stream 2, and previously this topic was developed. On the night on the 21st of August, in the Italian province of Rimini, a Ukrainian citizen, Sergei Kuznetsov, was detained, suspected of complicity to the terrorist act, and was known from the Western media and from official press release of the Prosecutor General's Office of Germany. There is an interesting picture. It's not being formed itself, but they make us believe in it. If one Ukrainian, with his friends, divers, just blow up just in front of the NATO with all their surveillance aircraft, warships, drones, satellites, the pipeline, so gently and so softly, not touching one of the 4 existing other pipelines, then NATO as an organization which is incapable to ensure its own energy security should be dismissed for incompetence. By the way, the investigation carried out by Brussels, does it understand that they just lost out of their sight all these acts, whether they condemned anyone, maybe someone was dismissed just because of that? That's a very interesting question, I wonder. The Russian side, once it received new information, called for an emergency Security Council meeting, and during the meeting held on the 26th of August, the Russian Federation underlined that Germany and France trying to derail this meeting and avoiding any cooperation with Moscow, unconvincingly referring to confidentiality and non-politicization in this issue. Oh, that's a very interesting case. Just in 2022, President Biden and the State Department and Victoria Nuland stated that they would destroy this energy infrastructure, Nord Stream 1 and Nord Stream 2. Within a year, within 6 months, they did so. And now they offer to us a non-politicized story. We not politicize it, we qualify it as we should. It was said that this investigation is just a coincidence up to them. It's just to lure away from the facts and cannot establish the full picture and does not give the straight answer to the key question, who is the mastermind and who is the perpetrator. The attempts to shift the blame of the blast of these infrastructure facilities to the non-professional divers without any serious state support, to mislead the investigation, are just irrelevant. I would like to mention that in line of this policy, the Western countries continue to submit to the UN Security Council insufficient information and ignore its international obligations according to the International Convention on Bomb Terrorism and International Convention on Suppression of the Financing of Terrorism. There is no other alternative. It is critically important to put a full-fledged investigation in order to establish all the perpetrators and bring them to justice. The Russian approaches were shared by the majority of the Global South, which called to the launching of a comprehensive, multilateral and unbiased investigation. I would like to recall that we asked that this investigation be held under the aegis of the UN Secretary-General, that it would be comprehensive, that every country gets a clear understanding what is being unfolded, and that the UN Secretary-General would understand what's going on with the investigation. But back then, the Western countries just completely ignored this concept. And what they're saying now, they just rehearse the rehearsing their canned speeches. They compliment Berlin for an unbiased work, and they even tried to interrelate the Ukrainian crisis by silencing of those who were masterminds and the perpetrators, ignoring that the situation should be viewed in a comprehensive way. But we see quite the opposite. Who was behind political statements of the leadership of the United States under Biden administration? But the Western countries prefer to keep silence. So this was shown that the Western countries don't have any willingness to have a result-oriented net result. They just make obstacles to the investigation. Here we talk not about just double standards. The repercussions of such a policy can lead to much sadder consequences because it undermines counter-terrorist efforts and can lead and encourage other terrorists that may commit such acts which do not see any adequate response of the West to such crimes and are being encouraged for future crimes. And the West just ignores this fact. If they do not take seriously such terrorist acts on the European soil, they just give a green light to all those who would be willing to commit such terrorist acts. Because likewise, the former terrorists, just of the recent past, these terrorists were encouraged by the West. They were encouraged by impunity, for example, and having a clear understanding that they can be used by the West in order to fight with other countries, acting in line with the rule. The worse feelings of the unwanted states, the better for the West. And this terrible logic can dismantle all those who cherish this ideology in the West. And just a couple of words on the restrictions against Russian speakers. Because in Ukraine, another law was introduced in Ukraine on the national, as they said, memory. The Kiev regime continues to speed up on the anti-Russian narrative. The Verkhovna Rada adopted the law on the basis of the state policy of the national memory of the Ukrainian people, and it develops the so-called decommunization law, which ultimately enshrines neo-Nazism as a state ideology. The new laws introduces an ideology on the formation of the Ukrainian identity as a result, and I quote, "the liberation fight against foreign supremacy in the 20th century and warn, and I quote, for independence against, and I quote, the Russian aggression starting from the February 12, 2014. And I wonder whether this liberation war was against whom? Maybe against Lenin, who wrote some memoirs on how to develop identity. Now these crimes are being qualified by Ukrainian regime as a proliferation of non-proved information and equated, and I quote, to the Ukrainian propaganda. So if we see that the Western Ukraine developed collaborationism with Nazism, I think that's not just about propaganda, Ukrainian propaganda. I think that all these crimes in Khatyn, all this was committed by the West Ukraine. This is just a historic fact.
The punitive mechanism belongs to a very interesting institution of the historic memory of Ukraine. We will provide you with the links to the materials that we mentioned, that we had prepared about this this institution. In other words, the Kiev bosses has one more tool to fight political opponents. Zelenskyy tries to erase the people's memory about the contribution of the USSR to the defeat of the Third Reich. They want to destroy tens of thousands of monuments to the Soviet soldiers, fathers, great-grandfathers of Ukrainians. They were Ukrainians, they had Ukrainian passports, and felt a spiritual connection with the country. According to the new law, the memory facilities, including the burial sites, cannot have the Soviet and pre-revolution symbols, including the St. George's ribbon, combat standards, and Soviet state words, and as well as the words Great Patriotic War. This is only possible for them when veterans died while turning into steel porcupines. Even in this case, they couldn't have looked the veterans in the eyes. They couldn't have talked to them. They couldn't have continued being their children, great-children and great-grandchildren. Veterans would refuse talking to them. All of this is to be brought to order under the law. In other words, this means the destruction within a year after the law comes into effect. But the word law is not appropriate here. It's anti-law. This so-called law is the same that the Third Reich had. They were abolished with shame. And Germany tried to wash away for many decades after that. This document that shows off the charts hostility against Russia and the Nazi essence of the authorities in Kiev include the glorification of fighters for independence of Ukraine in the 20th century and persons who committed heroic deeds for the sake of Ukraine. This is total nonsense. But that's the law that Ukraine now has. It is clear that these fighters and so-called persons are Banderas, Shukeviches, Konovaltsev, and are the accomplices to Nazis, traitors of the Ukrainian people. As wild is the new law that equates the state awards to orders and medals of the Belarus Ukraine People's Republic and Ukrainian main Liberation Council under the OUN and Ukrainian Insurgent Army. It is like using medals with horns. This is satanism. We oppose the fact that this new law, Russophobe law, show that the parliamentaries do not want to pursue the peaceful settlement path. We saw the progress following the Russia-US summit in Alaska. And the global majority talked about it and welcomed it, welcomed such negotiations and meetings. We call on the relevant international structures to analyze this new Ukrainian law and give it the principled evaluation. Everyone has to do that. Now about the situation in Moldova. The last weekend marked an important date, the 81st anniversary of the liberation of Chisinau from German and Romanian invaders that took place during the glorious second Yassi-Chisinau offensive of the Red Army. The patriotic forces organized a number of actions. The central event was the large-scale March of Liberation. Only in Chisinau, this event brought together more than 10,000 people. The Moldovan authorities, however, who pursue the policy of historic revisionism and whitewashing Nazi accomplices, ignored this date. President Maia Sandu, following the guidelines for all prospective members of the EU on August 23rd, said anti-Soviet statement, made an anti-Soviet statement dedicated to this anniversary, dedicated to the anniversary of signing of Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact. She tried to draw historic parallels with the modern period, that ostensibly some politicians want to involve the country back to the darkness of dictatorship and fear. If she talks about Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact, we should remember that it was the last of a similar pact signed by the Westerners. She should remember about Munich agreement and Nuremberg Tribunal and its outcomes. The Moldovans in the comments noted with sarcasm that probably Sandu wrote this post about herself, because it's under her rule that Moldova turned into a totalitarian state where the power is usurped by a small group of people who work not only the internal Moldovan forces, they work not only into EU integrational forces, they work for the neighboring Romania, because they have Romanian passports. Globally, they work for the Western forces who want to turn Moldova into yet another center for confronting Russia. Ursula von der Leyen already promised to turn Ukraine into one. They have the same plans for Moldova. With the NATO support, the country implements 18 projects aimed at strengthening the defense sector of the country. The budget provides for about 100 million euros in 2024. Over the last 4 years, the Moldovan defense sector received 3.4 billion euros in Western assistance. The list of armaments received from the West include armored fighting vehicles, air defense systems, unmanned systems. To get to know this equipment and to learn to deal with it, the armed forces of Moldova regularly participate in multinational NATO exercises. You should not go far to see more examples. In June, the MPs of the ruling party voted to expand authority of the High Security Council of the country, and that now the decisions of the Council are obligatory. Another element of consolidation of power in one hand and ensuring reliable area for the Sandu regime is the subjugation of the Constitutional Court for the new judges to give an oath. Even an extraordinary parliamentary session on August 17th took place. All these measures show the attempts of the Moldovan leadership who don't believe that they are able to win at the upcoming parliamentary elections fairly. In case anything goes wrong, they want to help themselves. We draw the attention to the disproportionate, or to say it frankly, frauds with the number of polling stations that are opened outside Moldova. We're talking about it not because we want to interfere with the election, but because people from Moldova asked us about it. Why Russia has just few polling stations? Not because of Russia's position. We are prepared to give Moldova an opportunity to open as many polling stations as they need. This is the fraud of Sandu, not to open polling stations on the territory of Russia in the necessary numbers. As a response to this policy and the aspiration to retain power, peaceful protests took place all over the country. This cannot be explained by the Kremlin, etc. These are people who are tricked. People in Moldova cannot even vote. Those who don't agree with the regime are threatened, blackmailed, and experience pressure. According to the media, the OSCE representatives saw the abuse of the law enforcers. People in Moldova don't believe what the EU politicians talk about, the officials in Chisinau. They come to Russia in large numbers in the run-up of the elections to show their support to Sandu and her team. According to the public opinion poll on August 20th, more than 50% of respondents think that Moldova moves into the wrong direction. Will the leadership hear the voice of people? We doubt that, because they are of no interest for them. They serve the interests of the West. We received questions about Russia's frozen finance assets. Since 2022, a number of Western countries illegally seized sovereign assets and reserves of the Bank of Russia. They they confiscate them and send to the Kiev regime. To justify this, they come up with pseudo-legal constructions, providing for the use of profits from the investments of the so-called frozen assets and their transition to various specialized funds. The main part of the assets was frozen on the territory of the EU. Only in 2025, the EU sent 8 billion euros to Kiev. Until the end of the year, they plan to send 10 more billion euros. These profits is a source to pay off credits worth $50 billion that were approved to Ukraine by G7 countries. And this is presented as charity. Any operations with Russian gold reserves without the endorsement of the Russian Federation are illegal. The freeze of assets of the Bank of Russia, as well as steps aimed to seize them, seriously violates the universally acknowledged principles of equality of states and immunity of state property. These actions contradict the UN Charter norms and the provisions of the Convention on Jurisdiction Immunities of States and Their Property of 2004. They see the central banks as a special category, they cannot be collected. President of Russia called that robbery. Hypocritical attempts to justify these actions with the Russian threat and whatever they use are evaluated as legally void. They don't change the essence of what is going on. That is the conscious violation of the international law. Besides, the current legal framework of the EU makes it possible to seize assets of Russian individuals and legal entities. The total volume of such assets exceeds 28 billion euros. We see the steps as the escalation of the economic aggression and an element of hybrid war waged against Russia. These measures cannot solve the systematic problems of the Western economies that faced stagnation following the sanctions policy and war. The aspiration to use Russian assets to finance Ukraine shows the ignoring the fundamental international commitments by undermining the confidence to the Western jurisdiction. They create a dangerous precedent. Countries of the global south and east will lose the confidence in the Western finance systems, and the Western countries will have to face more problems with budgetary deficits. These processes expedite the end of the rules-based world order and the establishment of the multipolar architecture of international relations based on sovereign equality and respect of norms of the international law. We reserve the right to take countermeasures in line with international law. We will act based on the reciprocity principle. Now about NATO. We took note of the draft intergovernmental agreement between Italy and Bulgaria on defense cooperation and regarding the joint construction and the use of military facilities, where Italy will have a NATO combat actor group. They plan a large-scale development of infrastructure, including construction of new barracks and railways. This is the practical implementation of the plans to increase the number of NATO soldiers in Bulgaria from 1.2 thousand to 5,000, that is, to the brigade level. This confirms that NATO confirms their policy of aggressive, ungrounded militarization of the European continent. This leads to further escalation of military and political situation in Europe and won't help to build more trust in the Black Sea region.
The Ministry of Foreign Affairs done a lot with the with its anti-neo-Nazism report and glorification of Nazism. And now we see another report drafted by our ministry on this topic. And this report, as you know, is an annual report. And it has the title, a very telling title, on the situation with the glorification of Nazism, proliferation of neo-Nazism, and other practices that fuel the escalation of modern forms of racism, racial discrimination, xenophobia, and related intolerance. This report is dedicated and coincides with a very important milestone, the 3rd of September, the day of victory of the militaries Japan and the end of the Second World War. The relevance of the topics cited in the report are reaffirmed by increased attempts to falsify and distort the history. I'm talking about portraying aggressors as victims and some other foreign phrases, and it is deploring, and we deplore about the flagrant attitude towards the memory of the victims of Nazism and fascism, and is especially deploring that this happens amid the 80th anniversary, which is widely celebrated globally. The current report is traditionally based on the provisions of the thematic resolution that was co-authored with Russia along with other states, and we annually submit this resolution to the UN Security Council. It is important to mention that the global majority shares our approaches. For example, 119 countries supported the Russian resolution 2024. 53 delegations, including US, UK, Canada, Ukraine, Moldova, and other EU members, voted no. In this regard, we are concerned by a destructive position of the former states of the Nazi axis, which remain as skeptical as for the declaration of Germany, Italy, and Japan for the committed crimes during the Second World War. Right now, the ambassador of France, the ambassador of the United States in France, which is a relative of President Trump, sent a letter, as it was put by the French media, saying that the French government say, and there is an outrage that the French society just forgets about the Holocaust victims and other manifestations of Nazism. We released an article in the newspaper Izvestia as a response to the problematics and to the issues raised in his statement to the government, to President Macron, by the ambassador of the United States in France. And it's quite obvious when over the last 20 years on the European soil, the Europeans just dismantled the monuments to all those who fought Nazis and fascists. And it is quite a logic behavior who just kept silent on the exhumation of the burial sites of all those who sacrificed their lives during the Second World War on the side of the anti-Hitler coalition. Their behavior is quite logic. They just ignored how the monuments and memorial plates are being dismantled and tombs are desecrated, the tombs to those who stopped the Holocaust. I think their behavior are quite logic. The behavior of those who did not invite the veterans of the Second World War to the events related with the liberation of the victims of the concentration camps. Now these veterans are refused and are of invitation, and their behavior is quite logic. Yesterday they forgot about the heroes of the Second World War, and today they forget about the victims of the Holocaust. If you want to commemorate the victims of the Holocaust, you should restore the memory of the heroes of the Second World War. And I'm talking about the overall conception that history cannot be rewritten. And switching up to report, we see that the Nazi ideas are being revived once again. It is deploring that the governments of some anti-Hitler coalition states desecrate the memory of soldiers who sacrificed lives in the fight against fascism. On the pathway and the glorification of Nazism, some states just shifted its approaches, justifying the Nazi regime and equating with the totalitarian Soviet regime, and trying to shift the blame for unleashing the war. And it's difficult to believe that they're shifting the blame to the Soviet Union, charging it with the crimes more terrible than crimes committed by the Third Reich. Over recently, this justification of Nazism was just a form of policy to counteract Russia's special military operation. Whitewashing of Nazism and its recent accomplices has become a form of support of the current supporters of the Nazi regime in Kiev. Moreover, they take attempts to equate European values with the glorification of Nazism that was showed by some accomplices to the Nazis. They get privileges and benefits and even permission to impose the standards of the so-called true democracy glorified in Brussels. The most alarming situation is being seen in the Baltic states in Ukraine, who glorify anti-Nazism, encourage anti-Russia narrative and other acts, criminal acts. Poland, Czech, we see the same picture. The anti-rating is being expanded with the inclusion of my son in Moldova. The Western countries who put a blind eye on the xenophobia in their countries, which mask the results and the manifestation of racism and that trigger outrage among the nations of the Global South as well. These countries just fix and enshrine the ideology of Nazism and using artificial intelligence. And the trends of this report just reaffirm that Russia confirms its topic that any manifestation, racial manifestation, directly threats the fundamental values of true democracy and human rights, represents a serious challenge to international and regional security and stability. Russia, along with like-minded states, won't tolerate such racist and neo-colonial approaches and will vigorously resist it. We will take whatever we can so that the deed of millions of heroes who liberated the world from Nazism and fascism 80 years ago won't become under oblivion. On the 25th of August, there was an awarding ceremony of the laureates of the fourth competition, Architecture of Diplomacy, organized by Glava PDK of Russia. This was coincided with the 80th anniversary of the victory and was held under the aegis Diplomacy Through Ages, and become especially significant, which brought together works from young artists from CIS states. This competition has become international for the first time this year. Austria, Belarus, Zambia, Kazakhstan, Moldova, Nicaragua, Netherlands, Syria, the United States, Turkey, and Uzbekistan took part in this competition. It is worth mentioning that the laureates were young people from Russia, Belarus, Georgia, and Nicaragua, whose works reflected the role of diplomacy in the current realities. The Diplomatic Academy held a knowledge-sharing meetings, Architecture of Diplomacy. I would like to bring your attention to the facts that on the Gogolevsky Boulevard in Moscow, you can see the exposition of those laureates, and you can give your vote for any work in the nomination of the Choice Award. I can say that this event showed the effectiveness of the cultural diplomacy and art as an instrument to strengthen mutual understanding, cultural exchange between the nations. In Artek, there was held and finalized the competition of School of Life, which was held between August 25th and 21st and 25th, organized by the Ministry of Sport and the Russian Football Union, and has become the third international program in the 2025, which aims to strengthen ties between the youth. This year, this fest has become an international. It brought together more than 2,000 children from 47 countries, including Morocco, Palestine, and Uzbekistan, and other states. The program of festival was packed, and apart from football matches between the teams, all the children had participated in workshops held by renowned sportsmen and athletes who shared their knowledge with their expertise and love to sports. The peculiarity of the festival was marked by the expansion in terms of education and culture. There were held quizzes, for example, with the participation of Olympic champions, as well as workshops and art ateliers. The festival was culminated by a concert and a prize-awarding ceremony for all the participants. We are persuaded that these projects bring value to the development of international humanitarian cooperation, bringing together all the children of the world. The fourth Kazan Youth Summit is being held in Kazan, being participated by the sports ministry of many countries. Kazan will bring together representatives from Brazil, Bangladesh, Qatar, Colombia, Mexico, Nigeria, UAE, Oman, Saudi Arabia, the Philippines, South African Republic, and many other countries. The main topic of the summit is the education of personality amid global changes, values, and professional way. During the summit, there will be discussed artificial intelligence and its impact on current education, the expansion of International Association of Youth Organization, the development of the network of school clubs, of the diplomacy, the movement of the first. Joint initiatives on education will be held as well. A special place is dedicated to the festival Unity in Diversity. Through cultural diversity of Tatarstan and other performances of artists, workshops, and of course national cuisine, the summit is held with support of the Minister of Education of Russia, the government of Tatarstan, the Kazan Federal University. Co-organizers is the movement of the First, the Academy of the Youth Diplomacy, and the Youth Center of the Republic of Tatarstan. On the 31st of August, Trinidad and Tobago celebrates the Independence Day. In 1962, the country liberated from the colonial metropoly, and within a few years, on the 1st of August 1976, has become a republic. Amid the expansionist policy and neocolonial policy of the West pursued by the West, we welcome the commitment of Trinidad to get liberated from the colonial past. The society now debates about the refusal from recognizing of the Court of Great Britain and delegating its authority to the Caribbean Court. Our diplomatic relations had been started on the 6th of June in 1974, and the official visit that took place between June 30th and July 17th, 1975, of the Prime Minister of country, Eric Williams. We commend the level of bilateral relations that are built on the mutual respect of interests. We are looking forward to further strengthening of cooperation, trade, economic, scientific, cultural, and humanitarian exchanges to intensify interaction on the international platforms, including the Forum of Gas Exporting Nations, for the benefit of our people and in order to form a more just and multipolar global world order. And of course, we wish the people of Trinidad and Tobago prosperity, peace, and progress. On the 1st of September 2025, Kaliningrad will open the park of miniatures and dedicated to the start of the Second World War. This meeting will be attended by the National Center of Historic Memory to the President of the Russian Federation, the member of the Public Chamber of the Russian Federation, Madam Malышeva, along with the Marshal of the Soviet Union, Mr. Konyev, and General of the Army, Vatutin. This park, the Solved Europe, is a unique historic landscape with the core landmark as the map of the East Europe, which reflects 7 monuments on the heroes, liberators, who were dismantled in a number of European states, among them the monuments in Prague, Warsaw, Kiev, Riga, Klaipeda, Tartu, and Sofia. This project is our response to a deliberate policy to distort historic truth and attempts to revise the decisive role of the Red Army and the Soviet Union in the victory over Nazism. The liberation of Europe has become possible due to sacrifices of our heroes, which claimed the heroes, about 1 million Soviet soldiers, whose deed, which solved the Europe from extermination, must be kept in memory by the current and future generations. And this opening of the park is not just a tribute to the memory of the deed, but also an important initiative to preserve the historic memory and to counteract the attempts to revive Nazism in Europe. And the fact that it's not just gaining momentum in the Western Europe, but even goes through the streets, marches, not officially, but it's marches in the streets and in the lanes, and this is a fact. Yet another important landmark event and a number of events in line with the agreements agreed by the UK, France, and Germany, the Soviet Union denounced the pact with Japan, and on the 8th of August 1945, it declared war to Japan, which denied to surrender. The statement of the Soviet Union said that after the surrender, Japan was left the only power that was for prosecuting the war. As a result of decisive actions of the Red Army in the Manchuria offensive, the Kwantung Army was defeated, surrendered, and disarmed. In the morning of the 2nd of September 1945, on board of the American ship Missouri, which was in the Tokyo Bay, an act of surrender of Japan was signed, and which meant the end of the Second World War. Apart from along with the Japanese side, was signed by the UK, the US, China, France, the Netherlands, Canada, Australia, and New Zealand. On behalf of the Soviet Union, it was signed by Lieutenant General Mr. Derevyanko, the head of the Chief Command of the Soviet forces in the Far East, under the Supreme Command of the Allied powers in the Pacific. The act proclaimed the endorsement by Japan of the Potsdam Declaration. The US, China, and UK, joined by the Soviet Union. The Japanese government was obliged to honor the conditions of the Potsdam Declaration, to give decrees and orders of the declaration that might be requested by the Supreme Command or any other representative assigned and appointed by the Allied powers. Japan was taken under control of the Allied powers, and thus putting an end to the bloodiest episode in the world history unleashed by Hitlerists and militarists, along with the militarist Japan. This act of surrender has become a milestone of the post-war order, with its fundamental principles enshrined in the UN Charter. With the cornerstone of this system is unconditional recognition, full recognition of the results of the Second World War. The 3rd and 6th September, Vladivostok will host the 10th Anniversary Economic Forum. It has reaffirmed the participation of more than 70 states. Over the last 10 years, this forum brought value and recognized as a requested forum to expand international cooperation in the Asia-Pacific region. Today, the forum is one of the leading platforms for those who are keen on depoliticized communications between academia, business communities on how to develop the Asia-Pacific region. This forum is being marked by the mutually beneficial dialogue, by a uniting agenda and correctness. We see that many countries from the global south are keen to participate, as well as along with China, Laos, Malaysia, Myanmar, Mongolia, the Republic of Korea, and Japan to participate in this forum. Let me recall, we were talking about this in 2024. More than 7,000 guests from 75 countries participated in this forum. Most numerous delegations were sent by China, Vietnam, Malaysia, and Myanmar. The forum is an intersection of a representative regional and global structures such as EEU, ASEAN Dialogue on Cooperation in Asia, as well as BRICS and ESCATO. So this Vladivostok platform cements this such inter-platform cooperation. The slogan of the current forum, Far East for Prosperity and Peace. The agenda provides for the international cooperation in the changing world, ensuring economic growth through investments, innovations, integration, the formation of new logistic chains, technological changes, urban planning, the development of the Russian Far East and its place in the region. Of course, there will be separate discussions on the role of the youth in shaping the overall future of the Asia-Pacific.
According to the practice of the forum, business dialogues on trade and economic issues between Russia and China, India, Laos, Mongolia, Myanmar, Thailand, and ASEAN will take place on the sidelines of the forum. The Third International Forum, the Day of the Falcon, on September the 3rd, and 14th Educational Task Conference will take place. As per usual, Foreign Ministry of Russia facilitates the forum. We will provide you with the links to the event, to the website of the forum, to its key events and events that are organized by our ministry in the text of our briefing. I just can enumerate that there will be measuring social influence of the AI. There will be session Asia is the gate to the world, the role of the Asian continent in the global media space. There will be a scientific and practical forum, the Far Eastern Victory, 8 years. On the sidelines of the forum, the Council of Young Diplomats, for the 6th time, will organize a dialogue of young diplomats of the Asia-Pacific countries. On September 4th through 6th in Vladivostok, our young Council of Young Diplomats will organize the 6th Dialogue of Young Diplomats of Asia and the Pacific region. The program will be busy. As per usual, it will be opened with a video address by Sergei Lavrov. There will be a number of working sessions on cultural, humanitarian, and youth cooperation in Asia and the Eurasian space. The speakers include the leadership of the ministry, well-known public and political figures, experts in international affairs. There will be a meeting with the sports minister, Mr. Doktorov. It is expected that the delegates will include 30 representatives of foreign ministries of the countries in the region. For the first time, representatives from Eastern Timor will be there. Besides, young diplomats will participate in the session organized within the Youth Day. It will be organized by the Department on Multilateral Humanitarian Cooperation and Cultural Ties of our ministry, together with partners. The last day, you will see the dialogue of the official ceremony of admitting new members to the International Association of Young Diplomats. It was established on the initiative of the Council of Young Diplomats of Russia's Foreign Ministry in 2021 to strengthen interaction between young diplomats. It has some 250 diplomats from more than 40 countries. On April 17th, it was presented in the UN headquarters within the ESCAP Young Forum. I'm prepared to take your questions. Is the International Affairs with us? Good afternoon, Madam Zakharova. Good afternoon. Recently, the Russian government had a decree that provides for the denunciation of the European Convention for the Prevention of Torture and inhuman or degrading treatment or punishment and protocols to it. In this regard, we have the following question. What was the cause, and will this have negative consequences for the Russian people? No, this will not harm to our citizens. The situation is not like this at all. Russia is committed to its international obligations in human rights, and the Council of Europe is not the only chain in international efforts on a comprehensive ban of torture and inhuman and degrading treatment and punishment. Look what the Council of Europe is now. Now about the real situation. Russia participates in the Convention Against Torture of 1984 and other universal agreements in human rights. Unlike many other countries, Russia agreed to review individual complaints at the UN bodies. But the Europe's committee for the prevention of torture does not have such an authority. As to the reasons, they were explained by our ministry. It is a natural consequence of the politicized and Russophobe policy of the Council of Europe in general and this European Committee in particular. It is confirmed by numerous cases. You see the agenda of the structures. The media has commentaries from those who do not have information about it or want to distort it. There's information that Russia ostensibly since 2022 has not appointed its representatives to the committee. It is not so. The member of the committee from Russia regularly took place in the sessions of the committee until the end of his term in December 2023. The process of appointment of a new member of the committee from our country was frozen by the Council of Europe in violation of all rules and procedures. On the other side, we understand that this is the natural and normal approach in the structure now. And despite the numerous attempts of Russia to settle this issue, it simply withdrew and accomplished to the legal limitation of our rights. You can find commentaries that ostensibly Russia cannot live without visits of this committee and its control, but there's no mentioning of the fact that the committee was not interested in the situation of prisoners in Russia and started to do so only in 2024 because of two cases, the situation around Alexei Navalny and terrorists that attacked Krakow City Hall. But it is clear why they chose those cases. They want to exacerbate confrontation with our country. As to the unbiased monitoring that we cannot live without. Following the visit to Ukraine in October 2023, the committee did not find any serious violations. See, this shows everything what can we comment on if everything was okay with prisoners in Ukraine in 2023? Of course, the participation of Russia was not futile. On the contrary, at a certain stage, it was very helpful to build up the internal system of for preventing torture. But in the current realities, the Council of Europe and this committee showed their true colors and their hostile treatment of our country in general, not only in terms of some particular and specific cases. Because of this, we cannot go on. Thanks to you. Is the RT with us? We are always with you, Madam Zakharova. I would like to ask you two questions. Yes, please go on. The first one, it is about us, about the RT TV channel. The Nigerian journalist David Hundein found out that the American embassy in Uganda holds workshops on fighting the Russian disinformation, as they call it. Special attention is given to the role of our TV channel, Russia Today, and ways to counter its work in Africa. Do you know about that? How can you comment on this? The American embassy doesn't have any other things to do in Uganda. This is my stance. We talked many times that Russian channels and media outlets experience a lot of pressure. And now these attempts came even to the embassies of other countries. You know, even better than me, they tried to put tax on Russian media, and Russia Today, RIA Novosti, Sputnik were among the first ones. They wanted to harm the image of these media outlets. Their aim is not really to technically influence the media, because the current stage, the media have a lot of opportunities to spread information through various sources, through radio, through TV, there's digital television, there's print, and there's social networks. The Westerners wanted to marginalize these media outlets, to make them toxic, to make the people not watch it. But they couldn't do that. They want to make people artificially dislike your media outlet. But this has an opposite effect. People like you even more, because the RT has a growing number of subscribers in Africa, in the Middle East. Until the end of the year, your channel plans to stop the broadcast in India. This shows the need of an objective information. There's a great need of in it, and this view of the current developments shows that people want to know different facts and different points of view. Despite all the blogs and even killings of our journalists, Russian media will continue expanding the geography of its broadcasts, even amid very dangerous conditions. As to the situation in Uganda, it seems to me that foreign diplomats should rewatch the meeting of Russian and US president that took place recently. It is important for the American diplomats to understand that now the situation moves into a different direction, and it cannot be curbed. There is no need for colonial influence. Countries African countries can define for themselves who they want to cooperate with. Under the Biden administration, the State Department turned into a center of opposing the common sense. And so we see in some of their actions that sabotage the decisions of the White House. Probably that's what they want to do. Do you have any more questions? Yes, I have another, one more question, if I may, about the President of Finland. On August 25th, during the parliamentary conference of the Baltic Sea states, he said that the relations between Russia and the rest of Europe is only possible after the lasting and durable peace in Ukraine. But even after that, the relations will be very different compared with those that existed before Russia started its aggressive war. What can you say about this? You know, we decided not to look for logic in the statements of the leaders of countries of the collective West. The same applies to the Finnish president. We saw that he lied and a lot of Russophobia in his statements. Sometimes he contradicts himself. He talked about pumping the Kiev regime with money and weapons, international isolation of Russia, and inflicting a strategic defeat on Russia. But they understand that they will have to reestablish relations with Russia in future. It is not clear how they say it, but they don't really say a lot about it and try not to answer questions about it. They try to stay between the calls for peace and the aggressive narratives that they use. The words about battlefields and the necessity to inflict a strategic defeat on Russia, and so on. Let's look at the words of President Stubb in terms of Finland. What does he doesn't want to return to some things in relations with Russia. What are they? Does he mean a regular productive dialogue at highest levels? This dialogue was not only political and it covered many spheres, not only the political sphere. Does he call for not to go back to multi-billion bilateral trade turnover, probably to multifaceted, mutually beneficial cooperation, active contacts between people, humanitarian and student exchanges? What things out of this in the logic of President Stubb harms and poses a threat to the interest of the Finnish people? Probably they should have said something if there was a threat, without exaggeration. I would say that this is a medical condition. It's a psychological it's an ability to tolerate and a painful reaction to emotional stimulus. It is characteristic to the officials in Helsinki today. Russia is always prepared to build mutually beneficial and respectful and equal cooperation with foreign partners. We have very good memory, but we don't harbor any illusions. We register all the words and deeds of our countries that used to be our partners. We see a lot of Russophobe statements of unfriendly regimes, and they don't like to read what they say. This is surprising. We tell them directly. Say business as usual. But business as usual is not possible. We won't tolerate moral supremacy. They lost their place to teach us anything, if they ask. If they consider their own mistakes. If they're going to talk about pragmatic cooperation based on national interests of Russia and with consideration of interests of Russia and respect to Russia, probably we'll be able to work with them.
Do they like it themselves to contradict themselves, to lie, endlessly lie? It's just fantastic sight. They lost the elementary dignity in speaking at such a level. This is the president elected by his own people. It's Finland with its own history. And I'm amazed by these irresponsible statements, which first and foremost damage the people of Finland. Do you have any other questions? Thank you. Any other questions? No, thank you. Thank you. We'll switch to the others. Is Media Corporation of China with us? Yes, good afternoon, Madam Zakharova. We have two questions that will be held very soon. SCO Summit, what are expectations with this summit, and how can it strengthen multilateral cooperation? The leader of the SCO leaders shall get an exchange on the relevant issues of the international issues, as well as discuss policy, economics, security. They will focus, of course, the further evolution and development and improving its activities and its mechanisms. In this context, it is highly relevant, the upcoming decision of the Universal Center to counteract the new challenges and threats to security in Tashkent, the Anti-Drug Center in Dushanbe. The SCO leaders will also focus the fact that these events coincide the 80th anniversary of the end of the war and the United Nations establishment. They will also discuss the fundamental issues which will outline the main areas for cooperation, such as AI, digital economy, green industry, transport, and so on. These issues shall be specified and discussed at the meeting of the heads of states in Moscow of SCO between 17th and 18th of November in Moscow. The relevant work is being carried out by Russia already. Thank you very much. And my second question, on the 3rd of September, China will hold large-scale events dedicated to the end of the Second World War. And they say that it's a good example of preserving the memory. How can you comment these events to restore the memory, and what role can they play in strengthening the international justice? I think we do not discuss we discuss all these issues on an everyday basis. The statements of the Minister of Foreign Affairs, of our ambassadors, international organizations, at our briefings, interviews, and articles, social media. We have many articles, documents prepared, and I'm talking just about our agencies. We pay attention to every historical date, starting from memorials, dismantlement, up to many scientific expositions. work with youth, information and awareness raising, as well as information support of youth projects. This is the whole world of what you are talking about. So the question whether it is important to preserve the historic memory, because it seems to me this is a fundamental track of our work, of the work of the Russian Foreign Ministry, and that's our attitude, the attitude of our country towards the preservation of the memory. Now we will talk about the events. The years of war for turned a real tragedy to China, claiming about 35 million lives of China. China paid a great price for its sovereignty, independence, for the right for the peaceful existence. Likewise, Soviet Union, which lost about 27 million citizens. It should be mentioned that this information is clarified all the time as soon as we get new information from historians. This is an important page of our common history, because back then the Soviet and Chinese soldiers fought shoulder to shoulder with the enemy. More than 12,000 our soldiers gave lives, liberating China from the Japanese militarists. And we remember how hard it was, the victory. And we are grateful to our Chinese friends for the preservation of memorials and the memory of our soldiers who fought against the Nazi invaders. And we hope that it will be so in the future. Mutual respect, resolution in strengthening and defending our interests had laid the foundation of a comprehensive partnership and strategic cooperation between Russia and China in the new era. We were together back then, we will be together onwards. As for the current realities, unfortunately, we can see that a number of states ignorantly try to erase the names of the heroes, to demonize and to put into oblivion all those names of the soldiers, and at the same time trying to glorify the real criminals and to glorify them as heroes is illegitimate and desecrating. And along with that, I call once again to get acquainted with the position of Russia and China in the document adopted by the leaders of our country on the 8th of May in Moscow. This is a joint declaration of the Russian Federation and China on further enhancement of the comprehensive strategic partnership in the new era to dedicate the 80th anniversary of the end of the Great World War and the victory of the Chinese people and the establishment of the United Nations. And we'll make the link in the text of our today's briefing. Thank you very much. Is Reiter with us? Madam Zakharova, good afternoon. We are with you, and we have a couple of questions concerning the Russia-US relations. And one of them concerns the results of the summit in Alaska. The US President Donald Trump said that he talked with Putin about the restriction of nuclear arsenals. He even talked about including China in the process. Maybe you can talk us through, maybe there is some work on this track between US and Russia, at least at the level of foreign ministries. And can we talk about the prolongation of this treaty, or whether we will see just another new agreement? Were you interrupted, or I didn't hear you? I thought that you wanted to continue to go on with your question. The question was whether there is some substantive work between US and Russia on some channels, on the potentially new agreement on the restriction of strategic offensive arms, nuclear arms. You traditionally ask this question and you get a traditional answer. We believe that our approaches remain unchanged as to resume a strategic dialogue with the United States and the future of INF Treaty. We have the relevant interview of the Deputy Foreign Minister, Sergei Rybkov, to TASS on the 9th of July, and on 24th of June, this article was released, which in detail reflects the whole approach of the Russia, of Russia. The main impediment is the current state of relations between Washington and Moscow, and Washington should return to honor the fundamental principles of the treaty. This is indivisibility of security, equality, and mutually beneficial cooperation, recognition of interconnection of strategic offensive and defensive arms. This is as for the prospects for the new treaty to replace the current treaty. Our approaches shall be reconsidered in line with the comprehensive analysis and the evolutions and developments in terms of international security and stability. Thank you very much. And if you let me, I have a second question as a comment to the recent statement of the Vice President of US, J.D. Vance, who recently in his interview said that Russia decided to accede to the maximal request, but whether there's information, are there some recessions? I think you should address to the US side so that they would clarify their statements. And I can suppose that the Vice President of the United States quoted and expanded on the topic that was previously referred to by the US President in April 2025, saying, and I think you know this quote, and we will make a link as for Russia's recessions. I think it was just another quote of the leader, or maybe just a link. It is my supposal, but I can suggest you this logic. Our approaches we outline both by the President of the Minister of Foreign Affairs, and we comment on a daily basis. Thank you. Is Lenta Ru with us? Yes, good afternoon, Madam Zakharova. We have one question today. Over the last week, the President of Uzbekistan made a number of statements that could be interpreted dubiously. He thanked the President of Azerbaijan for his policy and talked about the signing of an agreement on an expanded partnership with the EU. Along with that, he congratulated Vladimir Zelenskyy with Independence Day and got a response from him where he thanked him for his help. What is your comment on the actions of the Uzbek leader, and what is the current level of relations between the two countries? I think to the words and statements of the leaders of other states, the Minister of Foreign Affairs usually responds by the press service administration of the presidential office. But as for the bilateral relations, I can say and recall that the Republic of Uzbekistan is a sovereign state. It independently outlines and pursues its foreign policy in order to strengthen good neighborly and constructive ties between the countries. The Russia-Uzbek relations have a status of a comprehensive friendship and strategic partnership. They are mutually beneficial and developing on the principles of equality and interest of each other. We continue our comprehensive work to expand trade and investment ties between our countries. We have signed and implement many intergovernmental and interagency agreements on cooperation in various areas, as well as a number of mutually beneficial commercial projects. We actively have ties with Uzbekistan in CIS, SCO, UN, EEU, and many other countries and organizations. I would like to recall that Uzbekistan is also a co-author of the resolutions initiated by Russia to suppress the glorification of Nazism, the liberation of space out of weapons. Uzbekistan maintains our approaches and shares our approaches to strengthen disarmament approaches and policies. We are satisfied that both our countries appreciate the level of our ties. Thank you. Is Izvestia with us? Yes, Madam Zakharova, good afternoon. We have 3 questions, if you let me. The first one. The foreign minister of Czech Republic said that Russian diplomats should be restricted in their movement in the Schengen zone. Can you make a comment on this? With one word, I can. And I can provide you a couple of comments. I think they want to expand on it. They want, maybe they are ready to get a response. Because the European diplomats have a lot of movements in Russia. They cannot ban it. Maybe this is a counteract. Maybe they want to save some money on the petroleum. And this is just an invention, a know-how. I think that some European diplomats bear in mind some obsessions and forensic ideas. For example, as for the foreign minister, I think it's quite unprofessional. I think that this narrative put forward by the Czech and other European diplomats in the mass media is nonsense. But these fairy tales shall be implemented in practice, so it will be responded likewise. And you know, we take responsive actions, and they know about that. My second question. Recently, some Iranian figures, including taking high positions, made critical statements against Russia, and which was rehearsed by the Western mass media. It was said that Moscow, about some intelligence information against Iran. What can you say about this? Next time, please specify your question, because I saw such statements as well, and then I saw some Iranian colleagues refuted these insinuations. These are bollocks. I don't think you can treat them seriously, but they're damaging, and that's the thing. I would like to bring your attention that my Iranian colleague, Mr. Bagai, distanced himself from these insinuations, and he refuted them. I see that some statements are not just sporadical, they happen from time to time. And I think that such facts should be responded to by the Tehran government. I think this is the overall misinformation campaign to undermine the comprehensive strategic partnership between our states. Maybe one of the objectives is to discredit the consistent support rendered by Russia, has rendered by Russia to protect its legitimate right and national interests. The support, which is highly appreciated by Iran, and maybe it's just a kind of irritating factor to others, but it is obvious that all those who made such insinuations, these are hostile forces, hostile both to Moscow and Tehran. And by the way, we see that these fakes are being hyped by the West. I'm persuaded that the perpetrators will fail, and during the phone call between the presidents of Iran and Russia, it was held on the 25th of August, the presidents reaffirmed mutual intent to increase bilateral cooperation. But I completely agree with your idea, And I think it's a plan of action, and we need to write a counteraction article. Maybe we have done so, I'll just check. And this is my home task. Yes, thank you. And my third question. One of the milestone events of September is the final of the Intervision competition. We see that the Minister of Foreign Affairs dedicates a lot of attention to it. And not recently, there was a press conference by the Director of the Department of International Cultural Cooperation, whether the ministry plans some relevant events for the foreign journalists. I think everyone is inspired and looking forward to this event. There are preparations, some deliberations, and by the mass media, I see that there is a kind of inspiration and enthusiasm all around. And it's not by surprise, because everyone got tired that culture becomes an apple of discord. People just want to return back to normal. And I'm talking just about the world who wants and develops in line with the normality. Everyone wants to stop all the developments unfolded by the West, such as cancellation of culture, erasure of singers, artists, and other figures of culture from the lists, non-deliverance of visas, segregation of athletes. People just want normal international people-to-people exchanges. Everyone's just seeking for such human communication, some cultural exchanges that would be dedicated not to the cancellation of some culture, but to the warm and friendly attitude towards our cultural heritage, international heritage. Yes, indeed. In the near future, we plan to hold in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs a special briefing on this occasion, so we will tell you later. As for the timelines and the format of such briefings, I can also add that on the website of our ministry, of course, I know that you closely follow. We have made a special edition dedicated to this event where we post answers to the questions we get. In the special edition of the International Political and Humanitarian Cooperation, we post detailed information on this. Russia develops platforms for cultural dialogue and in general for humanitarian interaction. You know that we hold a number of events, including sports, cultural, were held within the last years with a uniting agenda. And of course, one of the main values and peculiarities of this event is a demonstration of the cultural diversity through music as a universal international language, one of the universal international languages. And as foundation documents of these events say, and I quote, "This is mutual respect, cultural sovereignty, and equality." We increase all those who desire, the list of those who want to participate in these events. Currently, singers from Belarus, Brazil, Venezuela, Vietnam, Egypt, India, Kazakhstan, Qatar, Kenya, China, Colombia, Cuba, Kyrgyzstan, Madagascar, Saudi Arabia, Serbia, the United States, Tajikistan, Uzbekistan, Ethiopia, South Africa, and Russia, of course, confirmed its participation.
And I also follow the news about this. Organize doesn't rule out that this list will be larger. The event is open for all the countries in the world. I can also say that since on September 19th through 21st, the Skalkovo Techno Park the media center will work. We have a lot of applications from foreign journalists. They are interested in it. There has been a specialized accreditation regarding the event. It was prolonged. I think it will be prolonged once more because the more countries participate, the more journalists would like to participate as well. The interest of the international media is seen for quite some time. Yet again, I'll tell you, it is aimed not to unify and to show culture, the modern culture of various countries, to strengthen international cooperation at the equal basis through intercultural and intercivilizational dialogue. Follow the section on our website. You will have all the necessary information there in real time. There will be links to sources that you'll need. Thank you. Thanks to you. I can also cite that we received a lot of questions. I can make a special list and material with answers to the most frequently asked questions of Russian and foreign journalists. It is prepared by the organizers and is available on our website. It features answers to the most relevant questions, how the work was done, or how the invitations were sent, what the organizers wanted to do, how the invitations were responded to by the countries, how countries essentially became co-creators of this event, how the preparation is going on, what channels are used for the preparation for the event. There will be a large number of answers there on our website. I recommend all of you follow this, and I do this as well. Thank you. Thanks to you. Is the Golos attaches to with us? Good afternoon, Madam Zakharova. Today we have one question. It concerns Palestine. There's genocide there. The Embassy of Palestine, together with the Foundation Do Good, hold events to support Palestine on September the 4th. I would like to learn more about it and to understand why should we participate in these events. How does Russia support Palestine? What does this mean? Does it mean for the world? As to your question regarding the event, I don't have the information about it. Probably you should go to the Embassy of Palestine and learn this from them. As to Palestine in general, people in our country share pain and suffering of the Palestinian nation in their fight to establish their own state. I hope that this answer shouldn't be mentioned once again. We talk about it every briefing. Is news.ru with us? Good afternoon, Madam Zakharova. I'm Mikhail Rosen. We have one question. It was covered partly today. What are the key expectations regarding the upcoming summit of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, what are the priority issues for Moscow there? I answered these questions while talking to colleagues, but I'll reiterate, we are set to adopt important industry documents defining priorities for the economic cooperation in high technology innovations, the digital economy, and so on. These issues will be specified during the session of the Council of Heads of States in Moscow on November 17th and 18th. Recently, it has become very clear that the interest of countries of the global South and East is growing in working with SCO, and we see this in the development of the SCO Plus format. We expect further expansion of the lists of SCO partners on dialogue. Thank you, Madam Zakharova. Thanks to you. Is Sinhua with us? Good afternoon, Madam Zakharova. I have two questions today, but they are quite similar to those that were asked by my colleagues, but with another stress, with another accent. This year, the SCO summit will take place in a Chinese city, Tianjin. How does Russia evaluate the work of China during its presidency? This is the first question. The SCO summit, the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, is about to start in Tianjin on August 31st and September the 1st. It finalizes yet another political cycle of the SCO activities and will become the highest point of the Chinese presidency in the associations. We know the initiative and energy work of the Chinese presidency while preparing decisions in multilaterality, regional security, sustainable development. We also know the contribution of our Chinese friends in strengthening SCO as one of the pillars of a just multipolar world order, honing its role as in Eurasia. We wish all the success and hope that everything will be good. Question 2. On September the 3rd, Beijing will host a military parade to honor the victory in the war against the Japanese invaders. Vladimir Putin will participate as well. What are the expectations from the SCO summit and this parade? What signal does this give to the world? I would like to ask you a question. What expectations did you have from the parade on the Red Square on May the 9th? From the visit of Xi Jinping to Russia and the negotiations with the Russian president, the same feelings we have now when our high leadership, the head of the country with a representative delegation, go to China to participate in a number of events. The central event will be this parade. We have very similar feelings because our countries participated in that deadly war on the right side of the history. We did everything to fight for our sovereignty and independence, but we also did everything we could so that the world survived in the fight against fascism, Nazism, and Japanese militarism. I follow the Chinese media, world press, Russian press, regional press. The evaluations are pretty much the same, with different emotional charge, but they are pretty much the same. As to the Vladimir Putin, our president, is our president will go to China, and this is a very important event. He will go there. He will participate as one of the main guests together with other leaders, and he will participate in events dedicated to the end of World War II. In May, the President of China, Xi Jinping, during the 4-day visit, visited the Parade of Victory on the Red Square in Russia. The Chinese army participated in the parade. Russia and China celebrate together this very significant date. This is a tribute to the great deed of our peoples during the World War II. Russia and China were the main military theaters in Europe and Asia. We defeated the enemies in the West, and during the Manchurian offensive, together with Mongolian armed forces and Chinese partisan teams, defeated the Japanese army. President of Russia many times noted that Russia remembers and values the contribution of the Chinese people to our common victory. The brotherhood of our nations that shaped during those severe years is the fundamental basis of our relations now. We proceed from our shared positions to prevent historic truth and justice. I can also tell you that this is a special page in the history of my family. My grandfather participated in the events on the Hassan River. He participated in the war in the Far East. Even here, we have some common ground. Many families know and remember this through the history of their ancestors, our common history. Thank you. Thanks to you. Is the Anadolu with us? Good afternoon, Madam Zaharova. We have 2 questions today, but one of them has 2 parts. It concerns the Palestine-Israel conflict. The first part is as follows. What do you think about the project of Israel providing for a large-scale construction of settlements on the West Bank? The situation is developing in a very negative key. This cannot but concern us. We comment on this development during every briefing. As to the newly announced plans to explore the zone E1 between the East Jerusalem and the major Israel settlement Male Adumim on West Bank that provided for the construction of 3.4 thousand housing items. We air our ideas during the bilateral contacts and during the sessions of the UN Security Council. This project worked out more than 20 years ago, was severely criticized by the overwhelming majority of the members of the international society. We hope that it won't be implemented ever, and we will stop talking about it. This, yet again, we can state the mass deaths of civilians, including journalists, in the Gaza Strip. One more tragedy took place on August 25th. According to the information that we have, following the Israel strikes on the medical complex in the south of Palestine, at least 20 people were killed. They included 5 media representatives, as well as patients and doctors. We express condolences to relatives of those killed. Any actions that harm civilians, including journalists, are seriously violating the international law. We want this conflict to be settled through political and democratic means. The second part of the question: almost 250 journalists were killed. Are you telling this to us, to the country, that every day talks about our journalists being persecuted? Tell this to other countries. We support we fight for the journalists. We want the world to see this problem. We did everything we could to show that General Director of UNESCO, Zelenskyy, that she kept silent about it. Some small incidents caused a lot of outrage and investigations, but when journalists die en masse, not accidentally, but because they are targeted, literally, and they are killed so they cannot share the truth. No one talks about this, so you shouldn't tell us how this topic should be treated. We commented on the deaths and other accidents and aggressive willingness to destroy, to erase, to wipe out the media in the context of the Middle Eastern conflicts and in other parts of the world. Yesterday, we had the funeral of Kirill Vyshinsky. He was abused. He did not fall victim to this, but the fact that they harmed his health significantly is a fact. Only yesterday we had this funeral, but the very next day we received news that other colleagues of ours are being targeted by Ukraine. We need world solidarity on this topic, and it should be expressed not only in sites on commitments, but in fighting these practices. I remember how small accidents, like personal arguments or something like that, became parts of the reports of the international organizations. We as a country were asked about it. A monument to Daria Dugina was opened recently. She was a great journalist fighting for the truth and freedom of speech. Unfortunately, this is only one name in a very long list of those who were killed and wounded, who were tortured in the prisons of the Kiev regime. There are they're being attacked, their houses and cars are being attacked by the Kiev regime. And the Kiev regime does not hide it. I'm not talking about marginalization, non-granting visas for international events. I'm sorry, but I take it very close to heart. Kirill Vyshinsky was in the Ukrainian prison. This person, as it was said yesterday, wanted to stay there after he was liberated, to continue fighting legally. He sincerely loved Ukraine, the people of Ukraine. He believed in the future of Ukraine. And he believed that it's not the Ukrainian people who was to be fought, but with nationalists and blatant bandits who commit impunity, including in the media sphere. But what's of it? He heard other people telling him to leave and left, and he had some years of life after that, and he spent it with his family and loved one. He did it to help others, to become the voice of the truth about what is going on there. So please ask this question to other countries. You are from Turkey. Ask officials in Ankara. So we oppose this together. We know what it means when journalists are killed, and we talk about it every day. We don't do exceptions to anyone. Unfortunately, the world and the Western countries in the first place changed their policies. For several decades, they had been talking that journalist is a sacred profession that should be protected, and journalists should have access to the information and so on. But now they don't want to see that even because of their profession, journalists are targeted.
I'm sorry, but it's very personal topic to us. Let's move on. Is Al-Maidin with us? Good afternoon, Madam Zakharova. We have one question. In your interview following the working visit to Washington, President of France, Macron, said and called Russia as predator, and at the same time he expressed his huge respect, and I quote, to the Russian people, its history, its cultural traditions and history. What is your comment on this stance of the French president? Oh, the French president, I didn't hear you well. The French president. As you know, very often we see some strange statements of the President of France in relation to Russia. Sometimes they are out of any decency and become just insults of Russia and its people. I cannot even make jokes on this, because it's not just about some jokes. It's more about the crisis in Ukraine, provoked mainly with the active participation of Macron's predecessors, I mean the previous presidents of France, which acted actively in the coup d'etat of Ukraine. It watched how the Kiev regime, on the French political funds and other kinds of support, political support, I'm talking about political grants, and how Kiev was shaping a quasi-state, completely illegitimate state, amid the state and the relics of the state that was completely destroyed by the West. The French ambassadors called to disobey the current regime and to dishonor the election regime, which was called as the Orange Revolution. And during the second Maidan and coup d'etat, they called to topple the government. And these were the French presidents. And that's they who can be called as predators. And if we are talking and meaning these notions, talking about such insults, and I think here we can say about predators that eat some dead tissues, because if they want the Ukrainian citizens die because of the arms supplied by the West, and then they get all the benefits from it, that's an ideology of all those animals who eat dead animals. But when our country, we hear some insults to our country, then please stand with your words. And I think that the West Europe for many years has led the same policy under the guise of democracy, imposing this neoliberal ideology, disrupting from the inside its real statehood and structure, just to get Ukraine as a tool and use it as we see it now, following the statements of Macron against Russia. It is striking to me when it's all interconnected with some other statements of the French state figures that they want to deal with Russia and can propose some interesting projects. I can tell you, please define on which side you are. Do you think that Russia is a predator, or is it a state you want to deal with? Maybe in the future or somewhere in the future. At least I want that they have a clear understanding and that they speak with one voice. Move on, let's move on. Maybe it's a kind of nervous response after the Russia-US summit. They were outraged that they want to be invited, that they want their voice be heard, that it is, but in my opinion, it's just an insult to Russia. I remember their behavior, and I think they should look into their own history. It was not Russia which attacked Russia. It was quite the opposite. It was Napoleon who almost invaded Russia and almost fired our city. And that's the hero they glorify. Maybe they should have remembered their own history, and we won't tolerate any insults in address with regard to Russia. We remember, once again, the patriotic war of 1812. And we remember all those images and the showmanship, and we remember quite well all how they ended up in this. So we are not bothered here to make any comments on the Macron's statements. Thank you very much, Madam Zakharova. Let's move on. Is Virelk with us? Good afternoon, Madam Zakharova. We have 4 questions, and I would like to start from the first one. At the end of September, Moscow will host a World Atomic Week, and I know that invitations are sent by the President of Armenia, Nikol Pashinyan. I would like to know whether he comes to this meeting. I'm confused that you ask this question to me. I think you should have addressed this question to Armenia. I can say that Russia has done a great deal of work to prepare. We have already got some answers from some ministers and presidents, but you need to address once again to official Yerevan to confirm the participation. We see that Armenia is keen on participating in this event, and they can talk about this if you are interested in this. Our experts in the nuclear area regularly exchange expertise. Right now, Rosatom, along with Armenian experts, are sorting out as to how to prolong this exchange. We understand that the partners have a responsible approach to this. The leadership of Rosatom are in regular contacts with the government of Armenia. Russia is ready to various developments and all kinds of equipment, starting from small reactors and up to modern stations we have at our disposal. And apart from the United States, it relies and being tested. We also take note of hostile attempts of the West to discredit the Russia-Armenian interaction in the nuclear area. I would like to bring your attention to these unjustified assertions that the current nuclear station in the Republic can be decommissioned, and that's kind of fake. And the second one, there were attempts in the mass media stating that this nuclear power station threatens security. I would like to recall that this nuclear power station was constructed with due consideration of the peculiarities of the location of this power station. And AIEA confirmed the reliability and safety of this station, so all experts have a clear understanding of what is happening on behalf of the West, who disseminating propaganda, saying that nuclear industry is a weak point. My second question. Last week, the Deputy Prime Minister Alexei Overchuk visited Armenia, and he said that he wanted to discuss some points, bilateral points. And during this visit and talks with the Prime Minister of Pashinyan and Deputy Prime Minister, whether they achieved and got the answers to the questions, and as to our joining the EU and Armenia obligations, and any other agreements related to the dealings with the United States. On an everyday basis, but regularly, of course, there are statements from various state bodies, stating they are going to join the EU or not. Let us leave it as put aside. All the meetings between our government of the Prime Minister Alexei Overchuk, Deputy Prime Minister Overchuk, were held in a constructive manner. Many aspects of economic cooperation were touched upon, both bilateral cooperation and in the framework of the Eurasian Economic Union. Especially, they discussed some exchanges in the food industry. There were found some technical incompatibilities. The experts also agreed on further steps in terms of bilateral cooperation, and this conversation showed that Armenia is keen on speed up the integration in the Eurasian Union, which is in line with the stability issues. Armenians see that this will bring value to the country. They understand that this will be helpful for the unimpeded access of Armenian products to the Russian markets. I would like to cite just the several numbers. Within the last decade, the trade increased almost 10 times, and the economic growth in this republic was the highest among all other CIS states. As for the summit in Washington, Armenian leadership said and informed us on the agreements achieved. It is important for Russia that these negotiations were long-standing and take into account the interests of all South Caucasus states. The inclusion of some extra-regional actors should not fuel the conflict potential of the region and establish new dividing lines in it. And this approach is fully applicable in the blocking of regional transport communications. We are interested in the unimpeded transport communication and requires involvement of all the interested stakeholders. I would like to underline that these trilateral agreements with participation of Russia, Armenia, and Azerbaijan reached in 2020 and 2022 in the context of deblocking of regional economic ties remain relevant. None of the parties has withdrew from them. And as for the relevant trilateral working groups, it made a great deal of work and achieved tangible results. And these results are impressive. I would like to mention that yesterday Nicola Pashinyan said that this trilateral agreement is all in the past. You know, you can say about his statements, yesterday's statements as well. And my last question, Madam Zakharova. I'm sorry. You know, I would like to have an understanding to clear out. Do you personally understand that all these figures of speech, whether who stays or who withdrew, these are kind of linguistic exercises? And what is more important is the document, which we do have, because right now everyone refers to the 1990 documents. Am I right? The document of 1991, and these are the documents of the past, and everyone refers to them. So let us comment. Not some such personal language, but let us quote the facts. And these are existing agreements, treaties, you can call them however you like. And I think no one withdrew them or denounced them. In order to continue these trilateral agreements, Madam Zakharova, recently, after your summit, the experts who are closely related to Armenian authorities promote the idea that allegedly the current agreements with the participation of the United States do not provide for the extraterritorial character of communication, apart from the proposals made by the Russia. They even say that the Russian border control authorities said that such communications should be restricted. Do you think that is true, whether the Russian side proposed a kind of a road through on this territory? We did recorded that the joint declaration following the summit in Washington of August 8th contains the principles of the respect for sovereignty, territorial integrity, on the basis of which the two republics will build their cooperation. These are fundamental principles agreed long before these Washington agreements in the framework of the trilateral working groups under the co-chairmanship of Armenia, Azerbaijan, and Russia to deblock the transport communications in the region. All the details, as for the Trump Road, we don't have such details. As we know, all the details as for the truck communication, the safety of communication, and many other details need to be agreed. As for the trilateral working group, we've received tangible results as for the road communication with the use of electronic customs control systems and other equipment which is being widely and actively tested in order to speed up the cargo flows. So in line that we share the border and common environment with Armenia, so this is out of question. We see how many fakes are being disseminated, and we think all of this is aiming to discredit this trilateral format. It has nothing to do with the reality. And my last question, Madam Zakharova. On the 29th of August, there will be held another anniversary of signing of the agreement on mutual help between Armenia and Russia. I would like to know what is your assessment on this treaty and how relevant it is amidst the developments of the recent years in the South Caucasus region between Armenia and Russia. I would like to first and foremost to congratulate our fraternal state with this anniversary. We attach significant importance to this document, comprehensive document. It establishes the principles and priorities for our cooperation, of our interstate relations, and defines modalities of our bilateral cooperation practically in all areas. Amidst the current geopolitical reality in the South Caucasus, this document provides a set of interaction in terms of security, including with the use of CSTO opportunities. We have no other alternatives to it. I mean, alternatives to this organization. We have repeated that we stand ready to talk with the Armenian side in order to speed up our obligations amid the current circumstances. The treaty also specifies the strengthening of trade and economic ties, especially on the consistent deepening of economic integration, work of the creating favorable conditions for the work of investment cooperation, the mutual protection of intellectual property, and transport and logistics systems. And we have already talked about the delegation headed by Mr. Averchuk, who visited Yerevan the other day, during which it was discussed in detail all the tracks that would provide impetus and strengthen our cooperation, the EU format as well. I would like to mention separately that the document focuses as well on the intention to expand our cultural humanitarian interaction, which is aimed to bring together our peoples who share common history, common values, and common culture. And we are looking forward to large-scale Days of Culture of Armenia in Russia, and they will be held this October. We have plans to jointly celebrate important historic events, and we have mentioned on many occasions that Russia appreciates multifaceted relations with Armenia, and we are committed to develop this. Along with the strengthening of the multipolar world, shows that further development of our ties of friendship between our countries meets the interests of our two nations. It is in line with the security in South Caucasus as well.
Thanks to you. Is Tavria with us? Good afternoon, Madam Zakharova. We have a question about Germany. Friedrich Merz said that Germany cannot support the current social system of the country. The Germany, however, is still one of the key sponsors of Ukraine. De facto, Germany wants to cut down the social guarantees and to reroute this money to the war. In your opinion, isn't this a betrayal of the German people from their own chancellor? I think that I'll said something I already mentioned. There's no need and no way to look for some kind of logic here. It is very difficult to look for a black cat in a black room, especially when it's not there. What kind of logic is this? It seems that they represent Germany, its own country. It is difficult to imagine that they act in opposition to their interests. But I have a feeling that it's like a performance. There are actors who play their roles from other plays. The only thing that unites them is their hatred towards Russia. But they have their own countries, their own peoples. They have to love them. It is impossible to eradicate the hatred towards countries, but they are elected, so they love their countries. This is the first task, but I have a feeling as if nothing unites them besides hatred towards Russia. Personally, it's a pity to see what happens to the efforts of several generations of Germans who worked to reestablish their country after the war. We cannot but note that it is Chancellor Merz who started this process, but his historic mission is seemingly to bury his own country. Let us leave this with the Germans. They vote, they choose. It is their country, it's their choice. It is up to them to work it out. We remember the history, we know the root causes of the modern problems in Europe. We'll do everything we can so that their moral, economic problems and other types of problems aren't our problems, as it happened more than 19 years ago. We will protect ourselves and secure ourselves from this. Recently, I was told by a German journalist, when are you going to wake the Germans up? And I said, you know, our ancestors once did that. Now it's up to you to do it. Do you have any more questions? No, thank you. Is the author E with us? Good afternoon, Madam Zaharova. We have two questions today. Within the journalist investigation, in the Agora commercial bank, we established a very interesting fact that the honored Council of the Macedonia is a member of the Committee of the State Council of the Republic of Tatarstan on ecology, use of nature, and agricultural policy, Salih of Iraq. Does Russia plan to cancel his executor as the honored council? You know, I went deep into this issue. The executor to the Council of Macedonia was granted to him in 2015. At the time, all the procedures took place in line with the law. As to the work as a council with his role as an MP, it's not up to the foreign ministry. You can address the council, the State Council of the Republic of Tatarstan, and to ask Mr. Salihov personally. I just checked that everything was in order. I have another question. What is Russia's strategy, given the fact that key economic partners shifted to aggressive tariff protectionism, including the tariff escalation between the US, China, and the EU? Does Moscow has a plan to create anti-crisis currency and trade zones that could alleviate this type of pressure? We noted many times the discrimination nature of the tariffs between the participants of the global trade. This can have long-lasting negative consequences for the world's economy. This will result in further protectionism, lower rates of trade, inflation pressure, and so on. Russia, as our partners in BRICS, SCO, and the majority of countries in the world do not share these approaches. We continue to be guided by multilateral consensus on international trade. We see that fair and discriminatory relations with trade partners is supported more and more among the developing states. And this is seen in the use of national currencies, the networks of direct correspondent ties is expanded without mediator banks. Alternatives to SWIFT system are developed. President Biden all these direct correspondent ties that circumvent mediator banks are used. They are developed as alternative development of the alternative systems. We see processes of the establishment of the financial fundamental of the multipolar world order, which is partly is response to of the global maturities of the sanctions dictatorship, including the aggressive tariff protectionism. In the long term, this will facilitate the strengthening of the role of states committed to a fair and indiscriminatory approach in international trade and the establishment of a more just world trade architecture. No one in our country or in other countries of the global majority started that. No one wanted to wage these trade wars, but as we have them anyway, they are waged against us. We will respond to this, and we learned to do that. Thank you very much. Thanks to you. Is the Poselskaya жизнь with us? Good afternoon, Madam Zakharova. Good afternoon. Good afternoon, colleagues. The Poselskaya жизнь. I have two questions. The first one. On the peak of victory in Kyrgyzstan, an Italian alpinist, Luca Sinigallia, died tragically. He tried to save Russian alpinist Natalia Nagovitsina. This case sparked huge public response in both countries. The question, how does Russian Foreign Ministry see this act of heroism and courage of the Italian citizen? What can it say about the current state of Russia-Italy relations amid this personal tragedy and the general geopolitical situation? First of all, I would like to say that right after we received information about what happened, I cannot tell you the precise day and time. About 2 weeks ago or so, our embassy in Kyrgyzstan informed the central office, our ministry, started to do everything possible so that by any means facilitate a Russian citizen. The foreign ministry and embassy of Russia in Bishkek were in coordination with the relevant agencies of the Kyrgyz Republic and did everything they could to save the woman. We saw the equal willingness from the Kyrgyz agencies to settle the situation, to help the woman. We received regular reports about what was done about it. There were a lot of attempts to evacuate her from the Peak of Victory. However, the rescue operations were interfered with severe weather conditions. And the conditions there, I would like to express our gratitude to the rescuers who worked smoothly and with courage, and I would like to give this gratitude to those people who participated in this process and to people who were there, who tried to do everything possible to save her. I'd like also to note the courage of the alpinists. They, with risk to their lives, including the citizen of Italy, it was not even risk to his life, he gave his life for this. They supplied Natalia with food, with all the necessary things. Unfortunately, the Italian citizen died while living. These are conditions. The situation is followed by people all over the world, and it was very difficult to read. It was a terrible death and situation. It was really difficult even to read, but yet again, we did everything we could in our power. We did everything and went into all the details of the situation. We express condolences to those, to the family and the loved ones of the Italian alpinist. This is an example of true friendship of people from different countries. This is a heroic deed, a personal deed. It is especially important given aggressive narratives of the representatives of the party of war in Italy and their attempts to incite hostility between our peoples. We saw something like this at the beginning of the pandemic, and Italy was suffocated with pneumonia, with the spread of this disease, and no one knew what to do with it. And Russia as a country came to help Italy. I remember how Italy, who wasn't supported by neighboring countries, they shut down the borders and forgot that it was a unified European space. They didn't remember law or morals, but Russia came to help. This probably it's another situation, but it is one more example among many how we truly treat each other. This is the response to all those who interfere with this and try to prevent us doing so. I read the materials and see the comments of our citizens and people all over the world, of those who appreciate these character traits that were shown by the Italian citizen. They are the true values of the Italian people. Do you have any more questions? Yeah. Yes, please. Question 2. Can you tell us in greater detail about the existing state programs to cooperate the voluntary resettlement to Russia of compatriots living abroad? What are the key aims? What are the practical results for today? What are the key problems that the participants face? Are there any plans to introduce changes to make the procedure easier and to make the program more attractive? Because there are a lot of people who would like to return to their historic motherland. The program is the only one program, and it is called the State Program to Facilitate the Voluntary Resettlement to the Russian Federation of Compatriots Living Abroad. It is implemented by the Internal Ministry of Russia, Russian embassies and consulates abroad. They facilitate all those who want to be resettled. Since 2007, within the program, Russia received more than 1,200,000 people. In the first half of 2025, more than 14,000 people. These are incredible figures. We see interests to the resettlement from not only in the neighboring countries, but only in the Western countries, because the policy of those regimes are becoming unbearable for people who sincerely wanted to live there because of, or ended up there for some reason, but they do not want to refuse their motherland, their language, their culture, their interaction and special tie with Russia. And this problem is very severe in the Baltic states. There are problems with transport and logistics. We try to settle all the issues promptly. One of the key aims of the program is to have people in various regions who are well qualified. The program works very well. The regional authorities can choose people that they need. This program is a changing mechanism. It adjusts to what is going on in the country and in the world. The Internal Ministry of Russia, together with the interested ministries in the working process, introduced changes to make the program better. Since 2024, the program was introduced with the Institute of Repatriation. This is a category of resettlers who now has more freedom in terms of the choice of their region that they go to in Russia. Over the 6 months of this year, the number of repatriants were 2,500. In comparison to 2024, it went up by almost 20 times. I also see that we have the African Initiative with us. Good afternoon, Madam Zakharova. I have one question today. Last week, the President issued a decree to appoint Victor Voropayev as an ambassador, extraordinary plenipotentiary in the Republic of Niger. Can you say when the embassy there will start their work. Our ambassador to Mali had this authority jointly. As soon as we have the information about it, we'll inform you about it. We will send a group of diplomats to establish the embassy there. The work of our embassy there was stopped in 1992, but Russia decided to resume the work of the embassy. Our states have a lot of aims. We have targeted joint efforts to build up mutually beneficial partnership in political, economic, humanitarian, and other spheres. We see measures to make our legal framework better. We are finalizing the text of the agreement on the establishment of Russia-Niger Intergovernmental Commission on Trade, Economic and Scientific and Technical Cooperation. This format is aimed to facilitate the practical project in business, to make the coordination between the interested agencies and companies more effective. We hope that our mission will help intensify contacts at the various levels between our capitals.
Thank you. And I would like to clarify, just in case, do we have any other questions I have not answered yet?
Hello, I'm Niaz Mustafa. I'm with you from Ruda Media Network. I have 3 questions. The first one is, Druzes, Kurds, and Alawites in Syria are asking for decentralization or independence from Syria. How does Russia look into this call?
Вы знаете, давайте вы все вопросы сейчас озвучите.
Let's just voice all these questions and I will answer to you in an individually. Okay?
Second question is that there has been some armed conflicts and fighting between democratic forces, Syrian democratic forces and Syrian forces that are led by Damascus. What does Russia say about these armed conflicts, and have you tried to mediate them to solve the issue? The third question is that Turkey has started its attempts to end its war against the Kurdistan Workers' Party. How does Russia look into these attempts, and how do you think this process will affect Syrian situation? Thank you.
Да.
Is that all?
Okay, great. I will prepare the answers and send it to directly. Okay.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Если еще у нас...
If you have any other questions, if no, then I say goodbye. I wish you the best, all the best. Thank you.